Okay, so I'll start with a few simple observations. Maybe the next picture, this is a structure of what I'm going to try to tell you. The proliferation of copies, not only in the outer environment, but also soaking into our skins and movements. Almost everything that constitutes our living spaces, like tables, we have this, all that here, chairs, crockery, doors, windows, lamps, the calendar on the wall, the book in our hands, everything that settles down on our skins, we form a second skin, like our clothes, shoes, tattoos, jewelry, the perfumes that overlay a biological odor, is a copy or a combination of things. Outside on the streets, there are the cars, the lampposts, the roofs and window panes, the concrete tiles of pavements, the traffic lights. They're all copies. As individual objects, they're copies. As groups, such as car wheels, stacked newspapers, or the biscuits in a tea stall, they are each a visible fragment of an open and infinite series of copies that are afloat elsewhere, related to the machine in particular and the industrial logical production in general. Marx terms this process the real subsumption of labor and describes it as a birth of abstract labor. Maybe the next picture. No, the picture before that. Yeah. No, after that? Yeah. So I sort of, another point, I want to do a really good, detailed PowerPoint thing to accompany, it was too much rush and I didn't get to do it. So I've done the minimum. So I'll show you, at the end of it, I need to show you two diagrams, or three diagrams, which is why the whole thing is not so important, but the diagrams are important, so that's why. So we're going to see a few things here to sort of summarize what I'm saying. Okay. The productive will of the individual craftsperson transforms with the advent of the Industrial Revolution into a collective will that materializes as a corporate will in the course of a historical process in which industrialism and capitalism coalesce and the entire technology and politics of production are subsumed by capital. It's a massive process on which lots of books have been written, some of them classics, that how this subsumption functions. If I go into that, we'll need a week-long seminar or something. So I'll just touch certain points and go ahead. The result of this subsumption of the technology and politics of production by capital is an inexorable proliferation of copies issuing from a new kind of algorithmic fertility that pumps out metals, plastics, chemicals, generating gigantic craters left behind by the extraction of raw materials, plus mountains of waste, plus a miasma of lead, plastic, toxic gases that permeate the atmosphere, the oceans, the food chain, plus a haze of light and noise in which our nights, our minds, our sensibilities submerge. Then I come to the second topic, the next. Disciplining matter. At this point, I will try to draw a few simple connections. If we consider the copy as a primary mode of existence of artifacts in the modern world, and if we consider a product essentially as a copy, maybe we can go to the next picture. Yeah. Essentially as a, so if we consider the copy as a primary mode of existence of artifacts in the modern world, and if you consider a product essentially as a copy, then we can find its position in the utilitarian scheme of things that the industrialized world is. By giving the idea of utility as proposed by Ben from the Mill an economic term, one can say that the product has to be useful for other people, meaning that people other than the producer must have a need for it. This is how Marx connects the use value and the exchange value of a commodity. The thing is a product only if it can be commodified and integrated into a market. So the commodification is baked into the form and essence of what we call products. Basically, which was never the case before and is only partially the case today, because we have art, we have handicrafts, should not forget that. There are remnants, so these things don't vanish, but they sort of take on position in a deeper archaeological stratum, so to say. So I will say later on that progress is actually the phenomenality of the constitution of an archaeology, but I'll explain that later. The whole point is that commodification is inseparable from integration into a market. So you need a market. Only when you have a market can you place something in the market. Giving something a position in the market is actually the process of commodification. Actually, when the product is for a short while sort of immobile at the threshold of the factory, it's actually, to be very precise, not yet a commodity. But it's a product, it's the end point of the production. But the moment it assumes or reassumes its mobility as a complete and as an assembled object, so to say, you have the logistics of transport, you have the entire setup of retail shops and things like that, and consumers coming, you have advertisement and things like that. So as a product sort of makes its way through the labyrinth of the market, so to say, it becomes a commodity. And the final point of the commodification of the product is actually the point where a price is established, because the price is the phenomenality of a commodity. With the price, the commodity becomes visible as a commodity in the market. So, industrial production follows function, which was very important for the Bauhaus architects, people like that. Form follows function. He said it approximately in mid-19th century. He was consciously or unconsciously basically summarizing.
Just put it on the chair.
I'm going to.
Just put it on the chair.
It's with a calamity if I don't have So, form follows function is basically the statement he summarized what was in the air as a still unfinished process of the first industrial revolution, the mid-19th century. So this is what has been done in the daily reality of industrial production. Yeah? Today it's a bit different, we'll talk about that also. So, in the case of so what does it mean to give form to material? In the case of a prototype, it means letting a constellation of forces impinge upon a material and transform it into a single object with a form subordinated to a function demanded by a market. So three things. We need a form, we need a function, and we have a product, so to say. These three things are integrated in the product itself. It's the end of the production process, which means it sort of encodes, embodies, or it sort of, it represents the pull of the market. Before being applied to the material, the forces must be brought to a repeatable, logical order that derives from the function that the product in human potential fused to the human body possessing a biography. Such potentials and capacities, which can either be naturally given or be acquired through training and education, are all capable of being invested in economically productive processes. Thus, since the advent of new, can you show me the next? Yeah, this is right. This is what I want. So now, this is going to summarize what I'm going to say. Thus, since the advent of neoliberalism, the concept of capital involves human as well as non-human elements like money, machines, buildings, human capabilities. I must add a note here. This was the strategy of neoliberalism to liquidate any Marxist critique because any Marxist critique depends, or any critique of capitalism depended on the opposition between capital and labor. Now, if you do this little trick, this theoretical trick of integrating or incorporating labor as a rudimentary form of capital, then suddenly you don't have capital and labor standing opposite to each other and in a tussle. You suddenly have big capitalists and little capitalists. The laborer is a little capitalist because he has only human capital. He doesn't have money, he doesn't have buildings, he doesn't have machines, but he has muscle power. So this is a rudimentary form of capitalism. So you say, so the neoliberals would say that it's bad luck for you, my friend. You have only some human capital. See to it that you develop a human capital and increase it like we are increasing our material capital, so to say. Maybe one day we'll treat you as equals. I'm sort of, there's a lot of anger in this kind of an analysis, and I'm sort of venting my anger with some irony. This is the whole, actually the entire strategy of introducing the concept of human capital, which is extremely seminal for the success and victory of neoliberal discourse and neoliberal politics. You have in Germany a term called Ich AG. Ich means I, and AG means, I don't know how you translate it in English, it's not company limited, it's a company which depends, supposed to, you'll be only successful in life if you transform all human relations and all psychological inner relations into corporate relations. That's a basic, it's a very simple ideal. At the core of any contemporary economic practice is a dual target of profit and growth. However, the point of reference for this complexity of relations between capital, profit and growth is the economic sector called production. The product marks the telos of the production process and the limit at which this process is completed. But it also marks, the product also marks the starting point of its commodification and integration into the market, just a repetition of what I already said. But limiting the concept of capital and the rationale of economic actions to the production sector tends to make us forget that contemporary systems of economic activities are sectored into different spheres. Firstly, there is of course a sphere of production, which requires no further explanation in the present context. Secondly, we have the sphere of circulation, in which commodities and money flow in opposite directions. I'm going into this detail because later on I'll show that in every sphere of contemporary economies, copies are rampant, and copies are sort of the dominant factor, so the fundamental form. So, secondly, so after production, we have the sphere of circulation, in which commodities and money flow in opposite directions. Because of this dual flow, it's logical that the sphere involves not only money, but also the entire range of logistical strategies associated with concrete, physical transportation, and a society of potential consumers, which has to be kneaded and manipulated in order to produce the quantity of consumption required for the dual target of profit and growth. Fourthly and finally, there is a sphere of waste management, and associated with it, diverse technologies of disposal. The production of waste is a constitutive element of any kind of use, whether it's in the final act of consumption in households or in interim acts of consumption in production sites. Most commodities are composed of consumable components and a non-consumable rest, which includes not only things like packaging, but also non-utilizable parts or materials like sawdust in carpentry, or snippets of fabric in a tailor's workshop, or the leftovers of fruit and vegetable in the food sector. So it's directly or indirectly connected with use and consumption. Indirectly, when the tailor is creating dresses for customers, for the market in other words, but that is what is pull of the market is, and the response through production and even consumption is a response to the pull of the market, so to say. And that generates waste. It's something which people for long time economists didn't bother about, but today, with the ecological calamity, they're having to take note of that. But it's part and parcel of the, I would say, of industrial economy, the industrial economic activity. So, the next chapter, next picture, please. Yeah. Can you switch it back again? No, I made a mistake. Okay. The next chapter is called The Role of the Copy in Contemporary Economics. Economies. The role of the copy in contemporary economies. All four spheres of industrial economies, production, circulation, consumption, and use, are dominated by the fundamental form of the copy. Any industrial product is an outcome of a specific process of production and therefore a copy of a prototype. In the sphere of circulation, money, which measures value and functions as a general equivalent of value, has a basic form of a copy. This applies to both the dimensions of money as designated by Georg Simmel as money substance and money function. On the one hand, money substance has historically assumed the shape of a wide range of valuable material objects. Of course, what is value is a question for ethnological research. I mean, ultimately you have culture, so to speak, behind economics, because you can't have a general definition of value. It's always context bound. So, money, substance has historically assumed the shape of a wide range of valuable material objects that could be used for measuring value and employed in rituals of gift exchange or barter. Like herds of animals function as currency in archaic civilizations, or the golden axes of Germanic tribes. Probably the most spectacular event in the history of money substance is the introduction of coinage, and later that of paper money. Since then, the form of the copy dominates in the sphere of circulation. Because the capital comes from the Latin caput, and caput means head, and capital is derived etymologically from the number of heads in a herd of animals. So, no two cows are the same. So, as long as you the copyability does not come into the world simply through the introduction of money. Money is much older than coinage, but through coinage. Coinage is and that's what Benjamin also mentions in his on the very first page of his famous essay on the artwork in the age of its origin. So you have money as coinage and money as paper money, paper notes. So, since then the form of the copy dominates in the sphere of circulation in the mode of identically formed and stamped substances, as in coins or paper notes. The second dimension of money was designated by Simmel as that of the money function, which is based on the immateriality and arithmetic combinatorics of real and natural numbers.